Yeah. All right. So hi, everyone. Welcome back to Emerging Leaders Conversations. And today we are joined by Ted Watkins, who is a Charlotte campus native, class of 2015 from the School of Hospitality. And so Ted, just to kind of get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, background, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. As you mentioned, class of 2015 at the Charlotte campus with a hotel and lodging management degree, and born and raised in North Carolina, which is why I didn't venture too far. I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, only about an hour and a half from where I grew up, and enjoyed that experience so much that I stayed in Charlotte. So I've been here for over 7 years now, and it's an interesting story, but I started in baking and pastry, and then after only one trimester, I went into hotel and lodging management at the recommendation of a friend who was in the same program and said, I think this is sort of a general hospitality degree. Maybe it'll help you figure out what you want to do. Which fast forward now, having been in a role in shutter booth with a photo booth company, it certainly did. I'm not in the hotel and lodging field whatsoever. So I love hospitality. I love helping people. I love being a part of my community, being a part of my church with my family, and so and giving back to alumni. So this is a great opportunity to help and just provide any sort of insight, and I'm excited to do that.
So Ted, in the Charlotte area, have you been able to connect with other alumni, either while you were on campus or during your time in industry now? How has that helped, professionally, personally?
Yeah, so I probably have connected with more alumni after graduating, and it's funny because I always use this phrase with my boss over the last few years since he met me. But I always say, Jay Wu runs this town. And we really do. There is not a place you go that you're not going to run into a Johnson & Wales alumni. And that makes me very happy because whether it's in the hospitality field, whether it's in business, finance, but most certainly in hospitality and being in this industry, that has been one of the reasons I've been so valuable here is that everywhere we go, every new hotel that opens, every new venue, when we reach out, oh, you went to Johnson & Wales University, and bam, the connection is there and the partnership is formed so much quicker. So certainly have made a lot more connections after and going back to campus. Staying connected helps me to continue to meet new alumni. I would say just being a part of that and being connected with those alumni, it helps remind you where you come from, and it helps you remind you of the support that you have, and what that name means, what that reputation is, and that you are a brand of Johnson & Wales University, and that everywhere you go, you represent that organization and that campus.
And I think that's true in, with all the campuses really, and in their respective cities and regions. It's fair to say that you always bump into some friendly faces wherever you go in the surrounding areas, which is what we want, especially younger alumni kind of coming out that will watch these, to keep in mind when they're entering industry, is that there are some friendly faces waiting for you, especially in a lot of the home cities. So during your time on campus, kind of sticking with, JWU connections and things like that, any particular experiences while you were on campus or even shortly thereafter that kind of helped mold, where you are professionally now, lessons learned, professors that helped you along the way, anything like that you can call back to regularly?
Yeah, and thinking about this, I knew one thing that stood out, and then you just said professor, and so that kind of triggers another experiences. So I guess it's kind of twofold. I would say one of the most valuable experiences I had was while I was at Johnson & Wales, and that was with the Emerging Leaders series, which is quite a nice coincidence that this is the Emerging Leaders, initiative with alumni. So I think Johnson & Wales has always been very pivotal and very successful in pursuing emerging leaders, whether as a student or as an alumni. And so the Emerging Leaders series with Matt Sharp at the time, who was our director of student involvement, he would always have the program as a part of that. That was the True Colors program, or part of that experience. And that was one of the first times that I had an experience with personality tests. And from there, my love for those grew, and it also helped me learn more about who I was, how I interact with my peers, how I interact with even my family and friends, and then subsequently how I interact now with my professional peers. Not using that as a excuse for my actions or my personality, but rather knowing that this is the type of person I am, this is my personality, and helping me understand those around me more, and being empathetic, or realizing that, well, maybe, okay, maybe I'm a blue in this situation, but maybe they're a gold or a green. And so not to put everyone on the same sort of color or category, and that, we each have a unique personality that we bring to the table. And so that was huge for me, going through that experience. And then also with the professors, I made some wonderful connections with Professor Weldon, who is now a retired professor, who was with the Hotel and Lodging Management program. And I will say that she was very pivotal in helping me stay on track, up until my last class, and whether it was about personal life or if it was about academics. She really helped shape my professionalism. And and then moving forward, I still continue to stay in contact with some of those professors, including Professor Rosenbaum, who works alongside with me of mentoring the NACE student chapter here in Charlotte. She's one of our biggest cheerleaders on campus for professional organizations, which I think is very important. Something I didn't quite take part in on campus in the hospitality field, but it's something that Kimberly Rosenbaum, she really advocates for, and that her and I share that love. So Johnson & Wales has done a wonderful job of, while being a student there, but then the follow through and being an alumni now.
What's one of the best lessons that you learned on campus, or even in, the things that you were involved in, that you still carry with now?
Just being organized and thinking ahead. So, I've always been a planner. I've always been someone who thought ahead, but thinking ahead in a sense of your work-life balance, again, what's important to you, and not necessarily, getting the job is important, being involved on campus is important, but understanding that we all have to take care of ourselves. And so that work-life balance, being on campus at a university that is so career-focused, you have to make sure you take care of yourself, because having that Friday off, and then of course the weekend, it's nice to say, well, I don't have Friday classes, so I have a 3-day weekend every week. Or you might work yourself to death and have a job that you work on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, which I did. And so I learned from that experience just to make sure I take care of myself, be aware of my surroundings, be aware of who I am and my personality type, and just how to interact with your peers, because it all comes back to relationships. You have strong relationships, then you have your career path is going to be very bright, very strong, because you will always have someone to turn to.
Absolutely. And speaking of, having someone to turn to, so you recently participated in a panel for emerging leaders. Thank you. And during that panel, I think you had brought up a mentor of yours that you still kind of look to for guidance and that helped you along the way. Tell us about that.
Yes. So my professional, he's a professional and personal mentor. I would say he probably leans more on the personal side, as he's not really related to my industry. But David has been a mentor since I met him in 2014 at a fraternity conference in Arizona. And I, I guess I would say it was sheer luck, but he was from the same hometown area of North Carolina as me. Because when I told him where I was from, he instantly knew, which at that, I never expected anyone to know where Liberty, North Carolina is. And he knew where that was. And so we just connected instantly on that home roots bond, and then, our shared values. So he has been pivotal just in, we forged that personal relationship, and then as time goes on, we continue to strengthen that. But then also, I looked at him for professional, mentorship and making changes, or right now making a pivot in my career. And one of the first things he told me at the beginning of this pandemic was, now is the time to, again, be thinking ahead. What are your skills? What are you passionate about? And what are your skills that you can transfer? It may not be in your industry. It may be in something totally different. And so I really was not thinking about that. I didn't think that it would even need to be an option. But we've learned at this point that for many, it has had to be an option. And so I'm glad that he gave me that insight. And again, just having that mentor who, they're personal, but not too personal, because your parents or your friends, it's easy for them to kind of wrap up some of the emotions in that feedback. And so someone who is able to give you sort of a third party perspective is
A little less biased than
yes,
having your parents kind of gas you up every now and then.
right,
It doesn't hurt, but it's good to
right,
have, like you say, a third party perspective.
absolutely.
So no, so and can you, again, sticking to lessons learned? So it sounds like that mentor gave you great advice, especially that you can use in the midst of what's going on with everyone now. Any piece of advice in particular that you cling to from that mentor that even if we weren't in a 2020 type of situation, that would still apply and that you can use to advance?
Right. I think he and I are very great at relationship building, maintaining connections and new relationships, and leveraging my career goals, or leveraging just the path that I'm on, both personally and professionally, making sure that it's relationships that we're looking at, it's the connections that we have, and it's not necessarily, I am a type A, but when it comes to something like this, it's not necessarily black or white. It's easy to say, well, this is my degree, my field of study from Johnson & Wales University, and this is what everyone else expects of me. But they only expect of you what you make known to them. So again, that relationship that you have with someone, the initiative, the foresight, the skills or passion that you share with them, allows them to see much more of you rather than just simply what a degree may say that you've earned accreditation in. So I think that's very important, and he has always pushed that, and he's always shared with me his experiences every time. Being in his 60s, he's had a lot more experience than I have. So he's able to give me a much broader timeline of experience and wisdom, for sure.
And in the hospitality industry, Well, really, with any industry, I know that there are, plenty of things that people look to for insight, knowledge, and things like that. Is there anything, within the industry that you may subscribe to, that you may look at on a regular basis, or even videos, podcasts, any of those types of things to kind of keep you on the up and up? Or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So this is probably the business economic type A of me, but I love to read the local business journal every day. It keeps me up to speed on what is happening in my city, what developments are coming to our state, both economically or with tourism, with new businesses that are growing, what new buildings are being built. So I love to read that every day, just stay up to date on what these dealings are looking like and how some of our strongest businesses in the area, how they're doing, because how they're doing typically is a measure for how the city overall is doing, and how that's going to attract new business. And then from there, it's, I think, very important to stay connected with local organizations, or if they're national but have local presence, local chapters. I think it's very important to stay plugged in with those, because they're going to give you information that is specific to your industry. So for me, we have a local tourism alliance here in Charlotte. So the amount of knowledge that they give you in just one email, you wouldn't know it otherwise. You just, you wouldn't see the numbers, you wouldn't see the events that are taking place, or the special perks that you get as being, connected with them and just helping promote an event. And so that is one that I love. And then I'm a part of NACE, which is the National Association for Catering and Events. And staying plugged in with that, again, keeps me up to date on a local level, but then also on a national level, as to what is happening in the industry, trends, education that you can take part in, even scholarships. I think, we live in a day and age where continuing education is important, depending on what you're trying to pursue. And so there's nothing wrong with always having that support, having those assets at hand, of scholarships or financial aid. So I think the more that you read, the more that you can learn. It always keeps you up to date on just what you have at hand, because there's so much at our access that we just don't realize.
So that's on the professional side, which is,
Yeah.
and how about, anything on the personal side that you might subscribe to, read on a daily basis, look at
Yeah.
regularly?
So on a personal side, I think reading books I love to read books that are related to goals or work-life balance. One book I'm reading right now, and this might be dependent on someone's personal beliefs, but my pastor at my church wrote a book about crashing the chatterbox, which is a wonderful book that talks about, balancing that little voice that's in your head that might try to discourage you or instill doubt in you, when really you have so much potential, of what you can do. And so I love reading that book on an ongoing basis, rereading it, and then reading books again that are focused on goals. So one book that I'm reading right now is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And it's a wonderful book because right off the bat, it reminds you that, a goal is one thing that you want to achieve, most certainly, but how do you get there? It's the process. And if we don't understand the process of how we're going to get somewhere, in essence, a goal is just something you've written down. But it's really about how you get there, who you get there with, what you're using to get there, and what little habits along the way are going to help you achieve that goal. So books are great. Personally, I don't read a lot of, maybe I work too much. I read a lot of webinars and business journal things related to work and sales. But I guess for personal life, books are very important. Yeah.
So setting goals is important. What inspires you to reach those goals, Ted?
You know, being quite frank, I'm certainly someone who is motivated by income and money, but it's not the number one thing. Um, it does inspire me, so I have to put it up there in the top three. I don't know who's not. We joke about that, but um, it's got to be up there in the top three or top five reasons. But really, what inspires me every day and with anything that I do is when I with this goal or with this new career path or with this new experience that I want to go through or accomplish. How is it going to change me? How am I going to grow? Am I going to have to change, aspects of me? And if I have to, then maybe it's not quite right for me. But also, who does it bring into your life? And who are you brought into, what life are you brought into? And what kind of impact are you making on them? What kind of change are you making? Um, you know, right now, as I kind of make a career change into real estate, one of the number one things that I thought about in doing that was, yeah, it is a passion of mine, but it's also a self-employment endeavor, which in my mind has always been a goal that I wanted to be self-employed because no, not because of the freedom, not because of I can make my own schedule, but because I can, yeah, have the freedom to go be involved in extracurriculars, support my community, support, nonprofits that I believe in strongly, or if it's a Monday at noon and I want to, take part in some additional alumni events, then I can do that because I'm self-employed. So that it's a little selfless. I mean, some of the goals that I look at, they certainly help me think about, well, how am I going to be able to take better care of my family or my parents in the long run, or whose life could I possibly change in doing this? So that is what inspires me the most whenever I look at a goal or I look at a big change in my life that I'm potentially going to go down.
So you mentioned your new real estate venture, and I want to give you a chance to give kind of an elevator pitch on that. And then I want you to, to kind of close this out. I think we have a lot of alumni that have started or are in the process of starting their own businesses, their own ventures. Since you've kind of gone through the process and all that, give us your 30-second elevator pitch, and then give one piece of advice to those alumni that are emerging leaders that are starting their own businesses and ventures.
Yeah. So, the quick pitch on this is, I've been in hospitality now for 6 years. I've been in this specific role for 4 years, and pandemic hit, beginning of March, and the first week of March we were slinging deals and large, national events coming into Charlotte, and then next thing you know, the next week it's nothing, went flat. So within a few weeks I was furloughed for about 5 months, and after that, it's ironically, I didn't think about what to do officially until the end of it, but I used that time to just reflect on family and personal life. And so got to thinking, and I was like, you love real estate, you love investment, you love redevelopment. You told yourself you wanted to be self-employed at whatever job you went to next, which is a kind of a big goal when you've only had 2 jobs after you graduated college. But again, it's all about what you want, and you can go for whatever you want in America, and I love that. So did that, went through the courses, got licensed, and it's flown by, but here I am balancing 2 jobs right now and building up a new endeavor. So the biggest piece of advice that I would say in a self-employment endeavor of any type is you have to make sure your systems and your foundation is in place. I learned that sort of in the hard way, even in the job I'm in now, because being in sales, you have a sense of self-employment because when there's any sort of commission related to a sales job, you do sort of dictate your income. Your employer has an expectation of you, we need to meet these goals, but you can exceed those goals really by however much you want to. And so being in a self-employment uh, environment, your systems, how you keep track of your clients, how you keep track of your peers and your mentors, your people who could be, whether business partners who might want to take, utilize your services, or those who can be referrals for you. So, which again is like a CRM as we most would have. And so having that system, having that foundation in place, making sure you're keeping track of that communication, I think is very important because in the long run, you don't have to scramble to if you're in a kind of a dry spell, or just kind of an odd time of the year, and you need to reach all your audience at once. How do you do that? And what system do you have in place to do that? So I would say that's probably the biggest piece of advice. Just anyone and everyone in your sphere of influence, having that in your back pocket.
So, all right, Ted, thank you.
Of course, always. It's always a pleasure.